It was just past 2 a.m. on June 26th in the London borough of Ilford. CCTV cameras mounted along bustling Cranbrook Road captured an eerie scene. A young woman strides purposefully down the sidewalk. She is 35-year-old Zara Aleena, and she's heading home after a normal night out with friends. She lives just minutes away and walks this route often. But unbeknownst to Zara, she is being followed. The grainy footage reveals a male figure tailing Zara at a distance. He stalks closer and closer behind her. The cameras lose sight of them briefly as they pass by a hedge. Police reports indicate it was at this point that the male attacker grabbed Zara and pulled her into a nearby driveway. The attack itself was captured on a neighbor's CCTV camera, but due to the violent nature of the attack, it was never released to the public. Zara was viciously beaten and assaulted in the driveway for over 9 brutal minutes, with her attacker returning to the scene a couple of times to continue his attack. Tragically, by the time she was found injured the next morning, Zara couldn't be saved. The grainy images pointed police toward identifying her killer as 29-year-old Jordan McSweeney. Earlier that night, CCTV had already captured McSweeney prowling the streets and stalking other lone women before setting his sights on Zara. One woman he followed for 20 terrifying minutes managed to escape into her home. Another he pursued tried to escape into a store, but he followed her right in, lingering menacingly until she finally fled on foot. This horrific murder captured on camera would expose troubling oversights in the very system meant to protect people like Zara. It would ignite outrage from women nationwide over lurking dangers on even the most familiar streets. And it would turn Zara Aleena into a symbol of an epidemic of violence that could no longer be ignored. Her name would echo across Britain, but only after her story had reached its tragic end. Zara Aleena was a familiar face around the Cranbrook Road neighborhood where she lived. At 35 years old, the London native was a bright spirit who was always quick to embrace life's adventures. Born in 1986 in Ilford, an area she knew like the back of her hand, Zara had excelled in her education and earned a law degree. She was currently working a 2-year placement at a law firm, on track to qualify as a practicing solicitor. Beyond her own career goals, Zara was passionate about helping others through the legal system. She had long volunteered at organizations supporting refugees and the homeless. Loved ones also admired Zara's sense of independence and adventure. She was always ready for a challenge and wasn't afraid of taking on the world. On the evening of June 26th, Zara had met up with a close friend at a local pub. Eager for a fun night out, she looked forward to the evening that lay ahead. After dinner and drinks, Zara told her friend that she was ready to call it a night, so the two said their goodbyes around 2 a.m. Rather than share a cab, Zara chose to follow her usual route and walk the approximately 15 minutes back to her house on Cranbrook Road. The weather was mild, and she cherished the fresh air and exercise. She planned to call her friend as soon as she got home, just to confirm that everything was fine. But Zara would never make that call. As she strode confidently along the deserted sidewalks, a predator was already silently tracking her every move. Jordan McSweeney had a disturbing history of violence against women that fit the precise savagery inflicted on Zara. Born in 1993 in Dagenham, Essex, Jordan McSweeney grew up surrounded by domestic conflict. He claims his earliest memory is of his father attempting to drown his mother in the bath. By age 16, Jordan had his first brush with the law. What began as teenage delinquency soon escalated to serious adult offending over the next 13 years. He accumulated convictions for burglary, theft, property damage, drug offenses, and driving crimes. Worst of all was his tendency towards violent assault, much of it targeting women. One former girlfriend reported how he dragged her from a moving vehicle during an argument. Others secured restraining orders due to domestic abuse at his hands. Behind bars, McSweeney's rage continued unchecked. There were incidents of him lashing out at guards and fashioning makeshift weapons in custody. In January 2022, he was disciplined again for punching a fellow inmate, extending his sentence further. But just months later, Jordan was deemed eligible for release back into society. On June 17, 2022, despite his extensive record, Jordan McSweeney was paroled from his latest jail term for robbery. He returned to a trailer on the grounds of a local fun fair that employed him. The conditions of McSweeney's release mandated he check in regularly at a probation office and obey strict curfews, but compliance and reform were clearly not his aims. Just 2 days after getting out, Jordan violated his license by skipping a required meeting with his probation officer. The first of many violations to come. A swift recall to prison should have followed, but due to a lack of resources, the order allowing Jordan's arrest was delayed until June 24th, leaving him free to offend again. And on the evening of June 25th, Jordan made no effort to lay low.
In our view, the probation service should have assessed Jordan McSweeney as presenting a high risk of serious harm to the public. If he had been, that would have led to a very different process around his release from prison and would have given the police more opportunity to bring him back to prison after he failed to attend a series of probation appointments.
Eyewitnesses placed him at a Cranbrook Road pub called The George, where staff eventually ejected him for harassing female patrons. Witnesses said he seemed visibly intoxicated and was difficult to handle. Only a few hours after being ejected, he would fatally cross paths with Zara Aleena just blocks away. Harrowing CCTV footage captured Jordan McSweeney's movements in the hours leading up to Zara's murder. His intentions that night were clearly sinister from the start. Around midnight, cameras outside the George show McSweeney stumbling into the road, nearly colliding with a bus. Undeterred, he proceeds to follow a woman up Cranbrook Road. She realizes she is being pursued and desperately seeks refuge in a corner shop. He aggressively enters after her, glaring threateningly until she retreats to the back in fear. Jordan then exits the shop and decides to wait for the woman outside. She appears a little while later thinking that Jordan was gone, but to her horror, she realized that he was still following her. She eventually made a run for it, and intoxicated Jordan followed behind. This woman is fortunate. She escapes with her life. But Jordan's thirst for a victim remains unsatisfied. Again, he is recorded singularly stalking a lone female up a dark side street. He follows for an agonizing 20 minutes behind this woman. Passerbys in the street noticed the odd behavior, but for some reason they didn't act upon it. This woman was lucky as well. She managed to cross the road and lose Jordan in a side alley. She too barely makes it home untouched. It's now 1:56 a.m. on June 26th. A camera outside the treble par captures Zara Aleena happily hugging her friend goodbye after their night out together, still unaware of the horror lurking just blocks away. Jordan McSweeney continues roaming Cranbrook Road, growing increasingly agitated as seen on video. When he picks out Zara passing by alone, it seems he has found his target for the night. In CCTV that was not released to the public, cameras caught McSweeney grabbing Zara Aleena and dragging her into a driveway along Cranbrook Road. For 9 endless minutes, McSweeney unleashes fury upon Zara, beating and brutally assaulting the young woman who had simply been walking home. Around 2:26 a.m., McSweeney finally ceases his attack and steals Zara's bag and phone before fleeing into the night. Behind him lies Zara's broken, dying body, though at this point still clinging to life.
She was attacked while walking alone on a residential street. She had every right to be there. She had every right to feel safe. But instead, she was the victim of shocking violence.
The next morning, Zara was found in the driveway by a passerby who called for help. She was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, but unfortunately, the severity of her injuries was too much to survive. At 9:54 a.m. on June 26th, Zara was pronounced dead from the extensive trauma sustained in the brutal attack. Police immediately launched a homicide investigation. Combing the crime scene, they discovered bloodied fingerprints and remnants of Zara's clothing and possessions scattered in the driveway. Detectives swiftly pulled CCTV footage from the surrounding area, hoping to identify the male figure recorded following Zara. The video showed him returning to a nearby fairground in the early morning hours after the murder. More footage captured the suspect casually disposing of a bag of his blood-stained shoes and clothing in a dumpster on the fairgrounds the next day, as if destroying key evidence. The CCTV provided police with a vital visual of the killer's appearance. Using the footage, they tracked down 29-year-old Jordan McSweeney, known to local authorities as a violent criminal recently paroled after his latest prison sentence.
Jordan McSweeney?
Cuffs on, yeah.
Can you stand up for us, mate?
Just tell him.
You're under arrest for rape and murder of a female at Cranbrook Road.
All right?
Okay?
I've got it. Yep.
Just going to search you now, all right?
Jordan McSweeney offered no resistance when police arrived at his trailer on June 27th to arrest him for Zara Aleena's murder. But he refused to speak when confronted with the substantial evidence linking him to the crime. Forensics had matched his fingerprints to those found bloodied at the crime scene. Traces of Zara's DNA were discovered inside his trailer and on the clothing he attempted to destroy. Extensive CCTV footage also tracked his movements before and after the attack. It was clear that he was their man. When questioned by detectives, Jordan remained arrogantly defiant, telling police that he had absolutely nothing to say to them and that conversations regarding Zara were boring him. Jordan McSweeney was charged with 1 count of murder and 1 count of rape and sexual assault of Zara Aleena. As he awaited trial in prison, he continued his pattern of volatile behavior. He refused mandated psychiatric assessments that could have supported a reduced sentence. Prison staff reported multiple incidents of McSweeney lashing out aggressively at guards who tried to control him. He seemed to feel no remorse for stealing Zara's life and shattering those of her loved ones. His extensive violent criminal history was revealed to the court. His record of assaults, domestic abuse, and even death threats against police highlighted the danger he posed. In light of the irrefutable case against him, Jordan McSweeney ultimately pled guilty to charges of murder and sexual assault against Zara Aleena. However, he continued trying to cause additional anguish for her family. He refused to appear at his own sentencing hearing, denying Zara's loved ones the chance to confront him face to face. He also dismissed chances to express any remorse for destroying an innocent life.
I accept that the defence solicitors commissioned expert reports to ensure there was no psychiatric defence to the charge of murder and to ensure fitness to plead and to be tried. These were responsible steps in a case of such gravity. I also accept that because of the action taken by criminal barristers, the defendant was not able to receive advice from junior barristers or the King's Counsel until October this year. I reject the suggestion from the defence that because he was heard on a prison phone telling his mother that he was banged to rights, he should be taken to have indicated at a very early stage that he would accept responsibility for the killing. He never indicated this to the court until the 16th of November, and at stages, his non-engagement frustrated the work being done on his behalf. In addition, as Mr. Carter Stevenson accepted in his written submission on sentence, he caused some additional delay through taking a belligerent attitude when required to come to court, including telling the jailers on one occasion that there was no point in attending a hearing at which he was required.
On September 28, 2022, Jordan McSweeney was sentenced via video link from prison. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 38 years before parole. This means that Jordan McSweeney will not be eligible for release until at least the year 2060, when he will be in his late 60s. But for Zara Aleena's loved ones, the torment of her stolen future will never end.